Namaste children. Hope you all are enjoying your online classes. Now we are heading towards the second milestone in our journey of class 10 economics. Yes, our chapter is sectors of Indian economy. What do you mean by sectors? Sector means a field of economic activity. We are going to deal with various kinds of activities which take place in Indian economy. So let us have a quick view of the subtopics which we are going to deal in this chapter. First we are going to discuss about various sectors of economic activities. Then we are going to discuss about primary, secondary and tertiary sectors. Third, we are going to do comparing work between the three sectors. Then we will deal with historical change in the sectors. Fourth, we are going to, that is fifth not fourth, division of sectors as organized and unorganized. Then we are going to deal at the last with sectors in terms of ownership, that is public and private sectors. Sectors of economic activities. Economic activities can be classified in three different ways. First, primary, secondary and tertiary sector. Second, organized and unorganized sector. Third, public and private sector. People in India are engaged in various economic activities. Some of these activities produce goods and others produce services. Activities are classified in various groups according to their common attributes. These are broadly grouped as primary sector or agriculture sector, secondary sector or industrial sector, and tertiary sector or service sector. Primary sector. The activities in which goods are produced using natural resources are covered in primary sector. Example, cultivation of cotton, milk production in dairy, minerals and ores, etc. Since most of the natural products are obtained from agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry, etc., so it is also called agriculture and related sector. It is called primary sector because it forms the base for all other products that are made subsequently. Secondary sector. The activities in which natural products are changed into other forms through ways of manufacturing are covered in secondary sector. Business process outsourcing, example yarn and cloth weaving from cotton, sugar or good from sugarcane, etc. Since the development of secondary sector, many industries have been associated with this sector, hence it is called industrial sector. Tertiary sector. The activities that help in the development of primary and secondary sectors are covered in tertiary sector. These activities do not produce a good, but they are the support for the production process. Example, transport, storage, communication, banking, etc. Since these activities generate services rather than goods, so it is called service sector. Service sector also includes some essential services provided by professionals that do not help directly in the production of the goods. Example, doctors, lawyers, teachers, barbers, etc. In recent times, certain new services based on information technology such as software industry, business process outsourcing BPOs, knowledge process outsourcing KPOs, and call centers have become important of this sector. Economic interdependence of the three sectors. There are various linkages between sectors. For instance, trade and transport establish a link between the producer and the consumer. Another example is of chemical fertilizers which are produced in the secondary sector but consumed in the primary sector. As agriculture has developed in the last few years, it has increased the purchasing power of the farmers, which in turn has promoted activities in the secondary and tertiary sectors. Hence, economic activities are highly interdependent on each other. On the next slide, we will see an example of how the sectors related together in the production of cotton clothes, part of the fashion industry, then continue with other examples. Now, cotton in the fashion industry. Cotton is grown and picked on a cotton farm. It will come under primary sector. Cotton is processed to cloth, which is in turn sewn into clothing, will come under secondary sector. Cotton clothes like jeans, shirts, etc. are sold in the shops. It will come under tertiary sector. In the process, many other services, in this above process, many other services like banking, transport, communication, storage, that is godowns, etc. are also needed. Now imagine what would happen if farmers refuse to sell sugarcane to a particular sugar mill. The mill will have to shut down. This is an example of the secondary and industrial sector being dependent on the primary sector. Next, imagine what would happen to the cotton cultivation if companies decide not to buy from the Indian market and import all cotton from other countries. Indian cotton cultivation will become less profitable and the farmers may even go bankrupt if they can't quickly switch on to other crops. This is an example of the primary sector being dependent on the secondary sector. Farmers buy many goods such as tractors, pump sets, electricity, pesticides, fertilizers. Imagine what would happen if the price of fertilizers and pump sets go up. Cost of cultivation of the farmers will rise and their profits will be reduced. This is an example of the primary sector being dependent on the secondary sector, that is industry. People working in industrial and service sector need food. Imagine what would happen if there is a strike by transporters and they refuse to take vegetables, milk, etc. from rural areas. Food will become scarce in urban areas, whereas farmers will be unable to sell their products. This is an example of primary sector being dependent on the tertiary sector. Now I hope interdependence between all the three sectors is clear to us, right? Let us move on to our next segment, that is comparison between the three sectors. As the economic activities are diversified and include various sections of human resource and raw materials, it becomes necessary to have an account of such activities to compare the sectoral growth rate and productivity as well as sectorial analysis of their performance. It becomes confusing and complicated to count for total production, as a single raw material may be used as several layers in the economy. So economists suggest to take final goods or the goods which are to be directly consumed by consumer, not meant for further processing and final services. The performance of each sector is determined by counting only the value of final goods and services produced by the respective sector. Now the advantages of counting the final goods and services only is that these already included in the value of all the intermediate goods that are used in making the final good. The value of biscuit includes the value of flour and value of wheat. All the goods and services are turned into monetary value according to their usability and counted for calculation of total income, total production of a country or a state. In using the value of final goods and services, we avoid repeated counting of pre-processed goods or intermediate goods. Different goods produced in a sector may be measured in different units like kgs, liters, etc. Hence cannot be added together. Therefore, to find the total production of a sector, the monetary value of goods and services is added up rather than adding up the actual numbers. Example, quantity of wheat is equal to 50,000 kgs. Price per kg is rupees 8. So value of wheat is 50,000 into 8 is equal to 4 lakh rupees. So 4 lakh will be counted in as the final value. Now what are the precautions to be taken while calculating the total production of a sector? The value of only the final goods is included and not the intermediate goods. The value of final goods already included the value of intermediate goods. If we also count the value of intermediate goods, then it will lead to double counting. That is, counting the value of good more than once. Example, wheat come from the farms, goes to flour mill. There its value has increased from rupees 8 to rupees 10. Next it will go to a biscuit company. It uses all these ingredients and sell the biscuit at the rate of 15 rupees per packet to the consumer. So we are going to consider 15 rupees as a final product, final value of the biscuit. That is, biscuit is our product here, isn't it? Here only the value of biscuit, that is rupees 15, will be counted, as it already included the value of wheat and flour. Gross domestic product, GDP. The value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a particular year provides the total production of the sector for that year. The sum of the value of production in all the three sectors in a particular year is called the gross domestic product or GDP of a country. GDP indicates the size of the economy of a country. It is the market value of the final goods and services produced by all sectors. Within the domestic territory of a country, there may be both resident and non-resident producers. The mammoth task of estimating the GDP is undertaken by the Central Statistical Office CSO working under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Government of India. This department collects information related to total volume of goods and services with their prices to estimate the GDP. National Sample Survey Organization or NSSO is an organization under the Ministry of Statistics, Planning and Program Implementation, Government of India that regularly conducts survey on employment and underemployment 5-yearly and figure out primary data for further use. Other sources like Census of India also provides employment data. Historical change in sectors. It is evident that most of the developed countries has gone through historic changes in the economic sector. The importance and dominance of economic activities has gradually shifted from primary to secondary to tertiary sector. That means all the developed countries now were agrarian countries once upon a time. And then industrialization shifted the economic activities from primary sector to secondary sector. Because new methods of manufacturing were introduced, factories came up and started expanding. People who has earlier worked on farms now begin to work in factories. Then service sector comprises dominant share in the economy. The shifting of economic activities does not mean complete elimination of previous sectors, but the importance and dominance of next sector is increased. As this agrarian economy shifted to industrial economy in developed countries, this may be applicable for all developing countries including India. During 1950s and 60s, Indian economy depended on agriculture and other primary activities, and now tertiary sector and service related activities has dominant contribution in GDP. In developed countries, most of the working people are employed in the service sector. In India, between 1973 and 2003, the production in all three sectors has increased substantially, but most in the tertiary sector. The graph shown on your screen shows a comparative analysis of sectorial contribution to our GDP in 1973 to 2003. The subdivided bar graphs show that the total production had grown more than 900% over the 30 years. Total GDP was 30,000 crores in 1973 with dominance of primary sector, but in 2003, the GDP is rupees 50,000 crores with service sector as dominant. It is the product of increasing tertiary activities like banking, stock market, exports, etc. Primary sector also increased quantitatively, that shows it can support the population and has provided a strong base for industrial growth. Which sector do you think has grown the most over last few years? Any guesses? It is the tertiary sector. Over the 40 years from 1970 to 2010, unlike other sectors, tertiary sector has increased very much and emerged as the largest producing sector in India, replacing the primary sector. The reasons for such quantum increase is public demand for the basic services like hospitals, educational institutions, postal services, police stations, banks, insurance companies, etc. Also like administrative offices, defense, etc. has increased and were also fulfilled by the government to a greater extent. This situation is seen in almost all developing countries. Greater development in primary and secondary sector has induced demand for service sector growth. As mining activities and agricultural activities intensified, it needed and demanded more services like transport, trade, storage, etc. As income levels of people rose, they demanded better quality of life and better standard of living like tourism, shopping, private hospitals, professional training, etc., which enhanced service sector. Due to globalization, certain new services have entered Indian market like information technology and communication technology, etc., which have become important and essential. The service sector employs various sections of people. Service sector in India is not homogeneous and equally distributed. Only a small section of most productive service sectors employed high skilled and educated workers, and the quantum employment is comparatively small. Simultaneously, a large number of small and micro level service sectors are booming, which employed a large quality and variety of workers such as shopkeepers, repair persons, etc. But productivity is less. Hence, only a part of this sector is growing in importance. Now, next question arises. Does with the rise of tertiary sector, the contribution of tertiary sector to the employment has increased, or with the decrease of primary sector, that is agriculture sector, to our GDP, its contribution to our GDP also led to decrease of employment in primary sector or rate of absorption of people in primary sector in agricultural activities? Let us try to understand this with the help of this graph given on your screens. The two graphs given shows the contribution of different sectors of economy to the GDP of the nation. Share of sectors in GDP. Observing the two factors, it is revealed that the change in production, that is share in GDP, is not compatible with the change in employment. The primary sector is still largest employer in the country. Although the share of the primary sector is diminished in the GDP of the country, but after these many years of independence, it still employs more than 50% of the population. The main factor responsible for this is that the secondary and tertiary sectors have not created enough jobs to enable a substantial number of people to migrate from agriculture to these sectors. Now, share of service sector in employment or various sectors in employment in percentage. Even though industrial output went up more than times during these 40 or 50 years period, the employment in industry sector went up only by 3 times. Similarly, in the service sector, although output rose by more than 14 times, the employment in services only went up by 5 times. Thus, even today, more than half of the workers in the country are working in the primary sector, mostly in agriculture, producing only about a quarter to the GDP. Many of the workmen are underemployed or disguised unemployed. This means that more number of workers are working in an activity than actually required. It is known as disguised unemployment. Although they appear to be employed, but they are actually not fully employed. Their employment do not necessarily contribute to productivity. Let us try to understand with a case study of Lakshmi given in your textbook. Lakshmi is a small farmer. She owns about 2 hectares of unirrigated land dependent only on rain and growing crops like jowar and arhar. All 5 members of her family work in the plot throughout the year. They have nowhere else to go for work. Everyone is working, but actually their labor effort gets divided. Each one is doing some work, but no one is fully employed. This is a situation of underemployment, where people are apparently working, but all of them are made to work less than their potential. This kind of underemployment is hidden in contrast to someone who does not have a job and is clearly visible as unemployed. Hence, it is also called disguised unemployment. Now, suppose a landlord, Shukram, comes and hires 1 or 2 members of the family to work on his land. Lakshmi's family now able to earn some extra income through wages. They do not need 5 people to look after that small plot. 2 people moving out to do work at Sukram's field do not affect production on their farm. In the above example, what we have discussed, 2 people may move to work in a factory. Once again, the earning of the family would increase and they would also contribute to produce as much from their field. There are lakhs of farmers like Lakshmi in India. This means that even if we remove a lot of people from agriculture sector and provide them with proper work elsewhere, agriculture production will not suffer. Income of the people who take up other works would increase the amount of total family income. Disguised unemployment also occurs in urban areas. There are thousands of casual workers like plumbers, painters, repair workers, odd job craftsmen, carpenters, etc., who search for daily employment in the towns and cities. You will find them gathered with their tools at the local labor chalk, awaiting for customers. They may spend the whole day, but even very little. These unemployments can be solved through creation of better opportunities. Thus, even today, more than half of the workers in the country are working in the primary sector, mostly in agriculture, producing only about a quarter of the GDP. Many of the workmen are underemployed or disguised unemployed. This means that more number of workers are working in an activity than actually required. Although they appear to be employed, but they are actually not employed. Their employment do not necessarily contribute to productivity. Let us try to understand this with a case study given in your textbook. Lakshmi is a small farmer. She owns about 2 hectares of unirrigated land dependent only on rain and growing crops like jowar and arhar. All 5 members of her family work in the plot throughout the year. They have nowhere else to go for work. Everyone is working, but actually their labor effort gets divided. Each one is doing same work, but no one is fully employed. This is the situation of underemployment. Underemployment, where people are apparently working, but all of them are made to work less than their potential. This kind of underemployment is hidden in contrast to someone who does not have a job or work and is clearly visible as unemployed. Hence, it is called disguised unemployment. Now, suppose a landlord, Sukhram, comes and hires 1 or 2 members of the family to work on his land. Lakshmi's family is now able to earn some extra income through wages. They do not need 5 people to look after that small plot. 2 people moving out do not affect production on their farm. In this example, 2 people may move to work in a factory. Once again, the earning of the family would increase and they would also continue to produce as much from their land. There are lakhs of farmers like Lakshmi in India. This means that even if someone remove a lot of people from agriculture sector and provide them with proper work elsewhere, agriculture production will not suffer. Income of the people who take up other work would not increase the amount of total family income. Disguised unemployment also occurs in urban area. There are thousands of casual workers like plumbers, painters, repair workers, odd job craftsmen, carpenters, etc., who search for daily employment in the towns and cities. You will find them gathered with their tools at the local labor chalk, awaiting customers. They may spend the whole day but earn very little. These unemployments can be solved through creation of better opportunities. How to create more employment? What can the government do in this case? How can more employment be created? Now it is important to convert the disguised unemployment into productive human resource. Government is taking various measures to assure that, like technical and institutional measures. Technical facilities like irrigation, availability of hybrid seeds, awareness about modern techniques of agriculture would increase the productivity of arable land and increase the requirement of human force in agriculture. Although, with technical facilities, some institutional support like facilitation of necessary services like market, transportation, storage facility and other processing units in the nearby suburban would encourage the farmers seriously and productively. The farmers engage seriously and productively. Another thing is promotion of allied agricultural activities. There is a need of to diversify the agricultural professional, as more than 60% of people are employed in it. Farmers should be encouraged to adopt allied agriculture like pisciculture, fish farming, horticulture, growing fruits and vegetables, animal rearing for milk and other products, beekeeping for honey, along with the cultivation of crops. Focus on small scale industries and bank credit. Most farmers depend on informal sources of credit like relatives and friends, traders, money lenders, etc., who charge a very high rate of interest. So government should encourage commercial banks to provide loan to farmers at cheaper rates. Government should also identify, promote and locate industries, especially the cottage and small industries in rural and semi-rural areas, which can generate employment for a large number of people. The opening of a cold storage where farmers can store products like potatoes and onions and sell them when they are getting a good price. Food processing industries FPI can be set up for agricultural products like potatoes, sweet potato, tomato, rice, wheat and fruits, from which processed food can be sold in urban markets. Improvement in rural infrastructure. Rural area lack of basic facilities like road, transportation, banking, warehouse, market, etc. Government should invest more in developing connectivity between villages and the markets. This will provide more productive employment to farmers as well as others who are employed in services like transport and trade. Improvement in education and health sector. There is also a dearth of educational and healthcare facilities in the villages. A study conducted by the Planning Commission, Government of India, estimates that nearly 20 lakh jobs can be created in the education sector itself. To improve public health in rural areas, we need more doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers. These are few of the areas in which jobs can be created. Simultaneously addressing the important aspects of development, every region or state has potential to increase the economic activities, income, and employment in particular area. Some regions possess high potential for tourism, some for regional craft industry, etc. These potentials could be tapped with a proper planning. Government along with Planning Commission is thinking of long-term planning with emphasis on inclusive growth and development in several regions. Planning Commission estimates that only tourism sector can assure additional employment of 35 lakh people every year if promoted properly. Along with long-term measures, government is also applying some short-term measures to provide immediate solution to underemployment. One such visionary step is the implementation of NREGA 2005. NREGA 2005, that is National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, was formulated in 2005 and launched by the Prime Minister on 2nd Feb 2006. Later on, its name changed to Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act MNREGA. The main features of the scheme are: it targets scheduled caste SCs, scheduled tribes SCs, and women suffering from poverty in the rural areas. To provide livelihood to the people below the poverty line, the scheme guarantees 100 days, recently amended to 150 days, in drought hit areas of wage employment in 1 year to every rural household in 625 districts of the country. The Gram Panchayat, after proper verification, will register households and issue job cards to them. This act is also called the right to work because if the government fails in its duty to provide employment, it will give unemployment allowance to the people. The type of work can be anything from road development, canal construction to any other similar work which may increase productivity of the land.